Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. I am Nurse Babe Britt, and in today's video I am going to compare the Acute Care NP versus the FNP. So if that is something that interests you, then please stay tuned and listen for more. Alright, so let's get started. So for starters, I am going to start with the FNP. What is an FNP and what is an acute care NP? And so the FNP is a family nurse practitioner. An acute care NP is strictly that, acute care nurse practitioner. And so a family nurse practitioner provides care in the primary setting. So that is typically the person you will see when you go to the doctor's office for like your annual checkup, or you take your kids to the doctor. They are typically the ones that you will see in settings like that. Sometimes you will see the family nurse practitioner instead of seeing the doctor. And so they function in settings like that. Sometimes you also see them in emergency departments and maybe some specialized clinics, but typically they still provide primary care. So that's care like managing chronic illnesses and, things of that nature. Versus an acute care nurse practitioner is someone who functions in the inpatient setting. And so they take care of you when you are acutely sick, like it is something new, you have to go to the hospital. That is typically who you will see. That is where they typically function. And so they care for more critically ill patients, and therefore the education is different for those reasons. So you might see an acute care nurse practitioner in the ICU. You might see them in the emergency department as well. They can work there as well. You might see them in the OR. You might see them in some specialized clinics as well, but it just really depends. But primarily you see them working in the inpatient hospital setting. Okay, so a FNP, the education is going to primarily focus on the lifespan, and so that includes babies all the way to older adults. The acute care nurse practitioner can focus on the same things, but typically the program is broken down into either adult gerontology acute care nurse practitioner or pediatric acute care nurse practitioner. Now, there are some programs they may offer like a dual, degree type of program where you get both. There are some dual degree programs where you can get FNP and acute care. And so those are, or you can go back and get a certificate. Let's say you do adult gerontology and you want to get a certificate in pediatric. You can go back and you can do that as well. But primarily it is broken down into adults or children. So adults or pediatric when it comes to the acute care route. The education is different because in an acute care program, you're focusing on, critical illnesses. And so critically ill patients, that is your ICU patients, your emergency department patients. And so these are not really chronic illnesses. Now, they may be caused by chronic illnesses, but it is something that has occurred, with that patient that has prompted them to come to the hospital setting. And so if you choose the adult gerontology route, then you're going to focus on the ages 18 and up. And if you choose the pediatric acute care NP route, then you're going to focus on children. And so that is one of the differences. Now, the admission requirements are typically the same. You don't always have to have experience in that particular field that you're applying for. So let's say if you primarily work with adults, but you want to go back and get your pediatric acute care nurse practitioner, degree, you can do that without any experience in pediatrics, and vice versa. The same thing with FNP. You might not have any experience in the primary care setting, but you can still apply for those programs. So that's typically not a requirement to have a certain amount of experience in a certain specialty. And so with that being said, you can directly go from like your undergrad BSN program directly into a master's or a doctorate program for a nurse practitioner. You can do that without working at the bedside. My personal recommendation is to work at the bedside for at least a year. I would say at least a year to get some experience, because it definitely does help, bridge the gaps that you might come across when you start, your specialty track classes. So that is why I recommend getting a little bit of experience, even though it is not required. And that does not mean you have to have experience, like I said, with that specific population, but just having experience at the bedside, I personally feel like it does help. And so when you do apply for admission to these programs, they do typically ask for a resume to, speak to your experience. And that is something they look at when, they are admitting you, even though, like I said, you don't have to have a certain amount of years. They also ask for your transcripts from any schools that you've previously attended, all of them. They want the transcripts. There's a GPA requirement. Usually what I see is a 3.0 and above. So if you do not have that, that is okay, but try to retake some of those courses that you did not do well in your undergrad years. And so retake, if it's especially those science and math courses, if you did not do well in those, try to retake those courses, because sometimes they will look at your overall GPA, and then they will also look at your math and science GPA. And so, if you don't have the GPA requirements, you can always retake classes, and you can also take additional classes that you have not taken before to help boost your GPA as well. And that is something that does look good on your application. You do need letters of recommendation when you apply for both FNP and Acute Care NP programs, and so and also an essay. And so a lot of the admission requirements are the same. The difference is the type of patients that you care for, the patient population that you care for. And so, like I said, there are dual programs. If you really just can't make a decision, maybe you want to do both at the same time, they do have programs that are combined, and then they also have them separate. Now there's MSN, FNP, and Acute Care NP programs, as well as DNP programs, and you do not have to have your master's in order to qualify for the DNP route. So there are BSN to DNP pathways that you can choose, as well as MSN to DNP pathways. And so if you're trying to decide which one is best for you as far as specialty goes, whether you want to do family or you want to do acute care, I suggest thinking about, what type of patients you enjoy caring for the most. If you're someone who works in an ICU setting and you really like taking care of ICU patients, then perhaps Acute Care NP is best for you. If you're someone who works in the ICU setting but you don't really like caring for ICU patients, or even emergency department and you don't really like caring for those type of patients, then maybe family nurse practitioner is best for you. Now, I previously stated that you can be an FNP or an Acute Care NP and work in the emergency department. That has a lot to do with the hospital. And so some hospitals do not have pediatric floors. They do not accept pediatric patients, and so that's not to say they'll turn away a patient, but they'll, quickly, transfer them to a hospital that takes care of pediatric patients. And so hospitals like that, they are okay with you being an acute care nurse practitioner and working in the emergency department, because the chances of you seeing a pediatric patient is very slim. Versus if you work somewhere that takes all the populations, including pediatric, kids as well as adults, then it does work out better for you to be an FNP, because you can see all of the patients, and it's a high chance that you will see pediatric patients. And so that is one of the differences. But you can be both and work in both settings. And so the other thing I would say is, if you're thinking about working outpatient, don't automatically assume that you have to be FNPs who work outpatient. Like I said, there's a lot of specialized clinics that you can qualify to work in as an acute care nurse practitioner, but a lot of that depends on if you're pediatrics or if you're an adult nurse practitioner, acute care nurse practitioner, and what does that clinic focus on. If you're someone who, let's say, likes to deal with kids and you like to deal with critically ill kids, then I suggest a pediatric acute care nurse practitioner route, because that is something you really enjoy doing. And I will also add that there are a lot of FNPs when compared to acute care NPs. So it's not that many acute care nurse practitioners out there compared to family. And so I say that because a lot of people don't know that. A lot of people might not even realize what an acute care nurse practitioner is. As far as rigor, when comparing programs, from what I've been told, because I am not in an FNP program, I'm in an acute care program, but from what I've been told, the FNP program can be a little bit easier compared to the acute care NP programs. And so that is something to keep in mind too. They are both manageable, and you can balance both going to school and working full time. So I haven't heard anybody that has said that they can't do both. I do both. I go to school and I work full time. So that is something that you really probably won't have to worry about. The only issue might be with clinicals. When you get to your semester where you do clinicals, you might be having a little bit of a tight schedule. But for the most part, you can work and you can still go to school with both FNP and acute care NP programs. And so at that point, it's really just up to you and what you're interested in, what you're interested in, and what you love and what you're passionate about. If you choose one and let's say you realize, oh, this is not really for me, and maybe you've already graduated, you can always go back. There are certificate programs that you can enroll in that don't take as long as the initial program to get certified to work with a certain population. So that is also something that you can keep in mind. Now, this video, I only compare acute care NP versus acute care NP versus a family NP. But there's so many other NP programs out there. You have psych, you have women's health, you have some people that just focus on neonatal. There's so many other things out there. So you're not limited to just acute care or family nurse practitioner. So find something that you are interested in, and I say go with that. I hope you guys found the information in today's video helpful, and I feel like I covered pretty much everything. I didn't cover pay because pay can vary, so I don't want to say, okay, well, you get paid more working as this type of NP versus the other, because it really truly does vary on where you live and where you choose to work and how you negotiate your salary. And so all of that, plays a part in, the pay packages. And so I didn't really want to get into that because it can vary so much. But for the most part, just focus on what you like. The money will come. The money will come. I personally, feel like a lot of people will say, well, I don't want to do the nurse practitioner because I can make the same money at the bedside as maybe a travel nurse. And yes, that is true. That is true. But keep in mind, as a travel nurse, a lot of times you are chasing the money versus a nurse practitioner. You can travel as a nurse practitioner as well, but sometimes you don't always have to just up and go so many places. You can stay in one spot and make that money as well. The workflow is totally different, so that is something to keep in mind. So don't only look at it from a money perspective and say, well, I can do this and get paid the same. Look at it from what is it that you enjoy doing. If you enjoy what you're doing now, then stick to it. But if you're thinking about doing something else, then just ask questions. Ask people that's currently working in that role how they like it, how they enjoy it, and do your own research and find out what works best for you. If you guys have any questions, please feel free to comment them below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on your notifications so you can know when I post my next video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you soon.